The Lost Liberal Decade. What is it? This video will be the first in a series where I will attempt to explain the idea of the lost decade, determine if it was truly lost, and hopefully by the end answer the real question: can we trust the liberals with another mandate? Following are the 4 most common talking points when it comes to the lost liberal decade. Number 1. Propagation of anti-business and anti-resource regulations. Number 2. Irresponsible management of the economy. Number 3. Overtaxation of Canadians. Number 4. The effect of uncontrolled immigration on Canada's housing and healthcare. In this video specifically, I will be focusing on the propagation of anti-business and anti-resource regulations. There are claims and accusations that the federal liberals stopped projects because of their very tight pro-environmental regulations. For an example of such a claim, let's listen to this clip of Pierre Poilievre, perhaps the most prominent voice on the lost liberal decade.
Why is it that after the lost liberal decade, we are so dependent on the Americans for everything? If the Energy East pipeline were approved today, there would be 1 million barrels of oil going from St. John to Europe. It's almost $100 million, depending on the price of oil. It's almost $100 million a day. Lost liberal decade.
So, a couple of claims there by Mr. Pierre Poilievre. Number 1, an implication that Energy East does not exist because of liberal regulations. Number 2, $100 million worth of oil sales per day. So what was Energy East? Why was it rejected? Energy East was a proposed but ultimately cancelled pipeline introduced in 2013 by TC Energy, formerly known as TransCanada. TC Energy, an Alberta-based company, planned to build the longest pipeline in North America. Energy East would have transported crude oil from Western Canada and the northwestern United States to Eastern Canada, roughly spanning from Alberta to New Brunswick, with key points in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and North Dakota. As Pierre Poilievre claims, it had the capacity to transport 1.1 million barrels of crude oil per day to refineries in St. John, New Brunswick. So are we missing out on $100 million worth of crude oil sales daily because of liberal regulations? To answer this, let's examine the history of both the Keystone XL and Energy East, because they are deeply intertwined. If you want the too long did not watch version and just want my verdict on whether the liberals are to blame or not to blame for Energy East's demise, skip to the timestamp on the screen now. In the late 2000s, Canada significantly increased its crude oil production, but the existing pipelines to the US were just simply not enough to move it all. On top of that, most frequently used pipelines were American-owned, such as those operated by Enbridge and Kinder Morgan. It's worth noting that Canada, under Trudeau, later bought the Kinder Morgan pipelines in 2018. But at the time, in the late 2000s, these pipelines were owned by a US company. This led to a major problem. Canada had to sell its crude oil at massive discounts to the US, since Canada was producing oil faster than Canada could transport it and had limited access to the global markets. They could really only sell it to America. To address this issue, 2 major pipelines were proposed. Keystone XL was supposed to efficiently transport crude oil to the US for refining and export. This is crude oil that we would sell to America. And then you had the Energy East pipeline. This pipeline would deliver crude oil across Canada all the way to the eastern refineries, which could then be shipped to global markets. The 2 pipelines together were supposed to be the solution to the bottleneck. Canada could now supposedly sell its discounted oil to America, but it also had a way to access global markets and much more customers, such as the markets in the EU. Sounds great, these 2 pipelines seem to solve all the issues. But there was a lot of opposition, heavy opposition. Keystone XL faced 2 major points of opposition. Opposition number 1, environmental environmental concerns in the form of oil spills. The original Keystone pipeline, Keystone 1, which is not to be confused with Keystone XL, Keystone 1 was already operating. Keystone 1 had multiple leaks within its first year in 2010. Even as recently as 2022, a major spill leaked 14,000 barrels of crude oil. This set horrible precedents for Keystone XL. See, one of the biggest issues was that Keystone XL was supposed to cross major water sources like the Ogallala Aquifer. This river provides drinking water to millions of Americans. Understandably, locals opposed it when they heard a Keystone pipeline would be running across it, given that Keystone 1 had already been notorious for oil spills. Issue number 2 was indigenous land rights. Keystone XL was also set to cross treaty protected land that belonged to the indigenous community in North Dakota. The indigenous community obviously strongly opposed this. There's not much to explain there. This one is pretty simple. Additionally, climate scientists like James Hansen from NASA warned in 2011 that increasing reliance on tar sands, which Keystone XL would facilitate, would be game over for the fight against climate change. Due to these concerns, the development of Keystone XL stalled heavily. It basically came to a halt. As a result, Canada needed another solution, leading to TC Energy, the same company that proposed Keystone, to propose Energy East in 2013. So finally, we get to Energy East. So what happened with Energy East? Well, just 2 years later, Trudeau would go on to win the 2015 federal election, and he did so on a very strong environmental platform, backed by the largest seat gain in Canadian election history. The Liberals went from 36 seats to 184. Canadians had voted for a real change, and part of that change included tighter regulations on oil projects. I'm just trying to make sure that when we dissect the issues of the 2010s, that we look at the issues from the lens of the 2010s. And at the time, Trudeau was seen as a magnetic leader, and Canadians by and large were in love with Trudeau's environmental policies. Anyway, by 2015, both Keystone XL and Energy East faced incredible opposition. Keystone XL faced it at the US state level by the citizens of North Dakota in specific, and Energy East faced it at the provincial level in Canada, particularly in Quebec. See, people in Quebec were not happy about this because, similar to Keystone XL, Energy East was also to cross a very important body of water, namely St. Lawrence River. Not only does this river have a historical significance, present time, this river is very important for both businesses and individuals for their drinking water. Moving forward to November of 2015, Obama straight up rejected Keystone XL, citing climate concerns. This set a horrible precedent for Energy East, to say the least. If Keystone XL was being blocked in the US, how likely was it that Energy East, an even longer pipeline, would succeed in Canada? Then came 2017. The United States of America would turn conservative as they would vote Trump. And Trump, being Trump, would go on to say, forget the climate concerns, I'm bringing back Keystone XL. So with Keystone XL back in play, TC Energy would go on to abandon Energy East, citing regulatory uncertainty and a lack of investor confidence. And they weren't wrong. There was so much opposition to Energy East, stakeholders started to fear that Energy East would never become a real thing. Development had halted, and with Keystone XL back, they decided to focus their energy on that pipeline, which is fair play. Fast forward to 2021, and America would once again go back to the Democrats, and Joe Biden would go on to kill Keystone XL permanently, marking the end of both pipeline projects that could have helped Canada solve its oil export bottleneck issue. Let's give a quick summary. Late 2000s, Canada produces more crude oil but lacks the pipelines to transport it efficiently. Early 2010s, Keystone XL and Energy East are proposed as solutions. 2010 to 2015, environmental concerns and indigenous land rights create very strong opposition. 2015, Trudeau wins with a strong environmental mandate and Obama kills Keystone XL. 2017, Trump revives Keystone Keystone XL, but TC Energy abandons Energy East due to regulatory hurdles. In 2021, Biden kills Keystone XL. So what's the answer to the question? Are the liberals to blame for the demise of Energy East? In my opinion, no. The blame cannot be placed solely on liberal government. There is just so much nuance to the topic. Trudeau wanted Keystone XL. He wanted Energy East. But still, Trudeau's mandates did introduce stricter environmental regulations. However, attributing Energy East's failure entirely to his administration overlooks the real hurdles. And finally, is it true that Canada would be able to reap $100 million worth of profit in a day if Energy East existed? So for this to be true, there are a few key assumptions that we need to hold, or I guess Mr. Pierre Poilievre is holding. Assumption number 1. The pipeline operates at full capacity at all times, constantly delivering 1.1 million barrels of crude oil. This is a very tough assumption to sign off on. As mentioned earlier, Quebec strongly opposed the project and demanded additional environmental regulations. These regulations could have, and for sure would have, limited how much oil could be safely transported at a time, reducing efficiency. Assumption number 2. The price of crude oil stays high. So I'm taking the numbers from early April, the first week of April. This video will come out the second week of April. The Western Canadian Select, or the WCS, is selling for around $60 to $62 per barrel. At full capacity, 1.1 million barrels per day would generate $66 million, far short for the $100 million claim. Even then, this assumes that Canada would sell every barrel at full market price without a discount. But still, $66 million is still a pretty good amount. It's better than nothing, I suppose. But I just wanted to point that out. And assumption number 3, European demand and climate policies. Even if Canada could sell its oil globally, European Union nations have strict environmental policies. Negative perceptions around fossil fuels, past oil spills, and climate policies would limit how much Canadian crude oil actually gets sold to European buyers. Whether you think climate change is real or not, it doesn't matter. It's just a shifting opinion in politics. So whenever we have an economics discussion, the impact of climate change policies have to be taken into account. It's just the world we live in.